what's happening. And I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for again conducting this hearing on this very, very important topic. Thank you all for being here, and Mr. Chairman, thanks for your leadership.
You're here. Thank you very much, Senator. Indeed, it's an indication how important our witnesses are, the issues are. Thank you so much, Senator, for being here. We now proceed to Congressman Marc Veasey of Texas.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Lord Blumenthal, thank you for joining us today. I tell you, one of the things that has really bothered me a lot when it comes to this discussion around anti-Semitism is the fact that we have stopped talking about a lot of the anti-Semitism that has been taking place in the Ukraine. And I just want to remind everybody of just a few examples of that. You probably remembered when Putin unlawfully initially went into Ukraine. He said that he was going into Ukraine because of the denazification of that country. Also, there was early on repeated attempts when it was pointed out that President Zelensky was in fact Jewish himself to try to delegitimize him being Jewish by saying that, oh, well, he's not really that Jewish. We've also heard attempts from the Kremlin to try to say that that Jews were, that the real Nazis were actually Jews. And these are some claims and some things that we've repeatedly heard since this unlawful invasion of Ukraine. And the reason why I bring that up is that President Biden, in his speech last week before the nation, he wanted to reinforce to the American public how important it was that we help our ally and friend Israel as they try to continue to combat what happened in the unlawful invasion in their country and the anti-Semitism that's rampant there. And then also continue to keep our eyes on the ball as it relates to Ukraine. I wanted to ask you, how important is it, and I'll start with Mr. Irwin. I wanted to ask you, how important is it that we continue to talk about the rise of anti-Semitism in the Middle East and what we're seeing now as it relates to Israel, but then also to continue to talk about anti-Semitism in the Ukraine and remind the American public that it's important that we continue to fight both of these forces of anti-Semitism in very important parts of the world.
Well, Congressman, you've really touched on a larger, parallelism here. In other words, what we're seeing is both in the case of Russia and Ukraine and Hamas and Israel, we are seeing, on the one hand, criminal aggression of Russia against Ukraine, criminal aggression of Hamas against Israeli civilians, but it's paralleled also by its domestic repression in each cases. And in its domestic repression, the falsification and inversions, for example, Putin saying he launched his operation, which is really a criminal act of aggression, for purposes, as you mentioned, of denazification. Again, the false accusation in the mirror. It is Russia's criminal aggression in Ukraine, which has been attended by war crimes, crimes against humanity, and acts which are constitutive of a genocide. Yet he seeks to invert it by using the Nazification metaphor. Similarly, with regard to Hamas. And I want to mention one thing about Hamas which we don't always appreciate, that Hamas is not only an enemy of the Jewish people. Regrettably, it's an enemy also of the Palestinian people. It not only takes Israelis as hostages, but it holds its own Palestinian people hostage. It engages not only in war crimes and crimes against humanity in the targeting of Israeli civilians, but it keeps its own citizens, Palestinian citizens, and uses them as human shields. So you have another double war crime, both the targeting of Israeli civilians and using Palestinian civilians as human shields. And so you have in both cases, both in terms of Russia's criminal aggression in Ukraine, Hamas's criminal aggression against Israel, paralleled by massive domestic repression, and therefore the need thereby to understand that both communities are being taken hostage by their very respective criminal leaderships.
No, thank you very much, and I really do hope that the panel and all of us will do everything in our power to remind people that the fight against anti-Semitism and the anti-Semitism that's taking place right now in the Middle East against Israel is important, but it is also equally important to fight the anti-Semitism that Russia is blatantly putting on display right now in the Ukraine, and we cannot turn our backs on what is happening in the Ukraine and only fight the fight in the Middle East. We have to make sure that we continue the fight in both places against this anti-Semitism.
Congressman, if I may just add one thing, because I just concluded my 3-year term as Canada's first special envoy for preserving Holocaust remembrance and combating anti-Semitism. And one of the principal findings I had is that we not only have to combat in that paradigm, combating anti-Semitism from the far right, from the far left, and radical Islam. That still remains true. But one of the most disturbing findings I felt in these 3 years was that we are witnessing the increasing mainstreaming, normalizing, legitimation of anti-Semitism in the political culture, the popular culture, the entertainment culture, the sports culture, and in particular in the campus culture. And here in North America, that is the future leadership in Congress, in the media and academia and the like. And so we have to combat that kind of pernicious mainstreaming that we have been witnessing both in your country and in mine.
Thank you very much, Congressman Veasey. And